We thought we'd start with a clip from one of the Tiffany films, Connected, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Because it really grounds why you're here today. And
yeah, I mean, just hearing the opening conversations. With this film, my real goal was to try to reintroduce systems thinking and the ideas of interdependence in the 21st century, because technology, you know, I feel like that conversation has bubbled up in all of these different times, and right now it's particularly exciting because we've created this exterior system of technology on top of all the systems that already exist. So this film started out with that intention, but it became, well, actually I should just say my father, who was Leonard Shlain, was co-writing the movie with me, and he, I grew up with a geodesic dome in my backyard, and he talked a lot about systems thinking and a lot about the brain, and he was co-writing it with me and my husband, and in the middle of making it, he was diagnosed with brain cancer, and that was horrible, but it, because he was a surgeon and wrote a lot about the brain, we actually talked a lot about what was going on and about life and the meaning of life. So the film really took a different turn. So it's about connectedness of our civilization, but also was about my own connectedness with my father. So it wove in back and forth between these two stories. So we'll show it here.
So I'm at lunch with this really good friend of mine, and we are having a fantastic time. I haven't seen her in years. We're laughing, drinking, talking, but I'm still getting this urge to check my email. And I was like, Tiffany, stay focused. You traveled all the way across the United States to see her. Stay focused. But eventually it was like, it overtook me. And then I faked needing to go to the bathroom. So I excuse myself, grab my phone, go into the bathroom stall, kind of hiding, texting, emailing, thinking, what if I become? I can't be the only one sneaking to the bathroom to check my email. Technology is clearly changing us, and the way we connect with our friends, our families, and the world around us. So I set out to make a film about what it means to be connected in the 21st century. Things are changing. There's so much more to think about. And that pace of change is only accelerating. How much faster can it go before we can't keep up? This was the kind of question I was exploring in this film. And then I had this year that turned my world upside down. And forced me to rethink everything I thought I understood about the ways we're connected. We as humans have accumulated so much knowledge. Why do we have such a hard time seeing the bigger picture? For centuries, we've been declaring independence, and perhaps it's time to finally declare our interdependence.
So Tiffany, a lot of the movie and the films that you do are about connectedness and interconnectedness, and how does that relate to resilience?
It's all about that. I mean, the more you understand how interdependent and connected everything is, and everything you do is, it is creating, I mean, you're not only creating a more resilient system, but you're part of it, and it's more empowering to understand, to look at the world that way. That was what I was really trying to do with this film. So resilience, when you have many points, as we heard from our opening talk, you know, it makes the whole system, you know, it's not one central point that controls everything. So, I mean, I was really trying to do it in a fresh, new way to explore these ideas. And a lot of my films try to visualize connectedness in all these different permutations. I think the last line of this film is perhaps it's time to declare our interdependence. So we did an experiment in collaborative filmmaking where we rewrote the Declaration of Independence as a Declaration of Interdependence, and we posted it on the internet and had people read it. We edited it all together. We asked people to help us translate it, and suddenly we made what we call cloud films now, which are completely made collaboratively with people from all over the world that I'll never meet. And then we make free versions for nonprofits, and it's so exciting for me to, in a lot of ways, when you think about the points in design, it was trying to solve a problem of creating something collaboratively and then helping nonprofits collaboratively. That's my answer to that.
Great. I know, I love that project that you're doing.
It's been really
incredible.
It seems like it applies. When I was hearing the talks this morning, I'm like, it's all about that.
Yeah. You have this. You have a very public voice now.
Yeah.
And we know you because we know this sort of personal voice. How do you manage between your public voice, your personal voice? How did you find your voice? How did that all come to be? Because it was sort of a gradual transition.
Well, I mean, being here in this theater, when I was in my 20s, I started the Webby Awards, and this was like one of our very first venues, and it was such a stressful period of my life doing the Webby Awards. But you know, I think courage is like a muscle that you constantly need to exercise, and you know, I do a lot of public speaking now. When I first did it, I would get nervous, and I get much less nervous now. I think it's always good to be a little nervous. Good, push yourself. But I think all of the mediums today, like it's incredibly empowering to tell my own story. I do a newsletter called Breakfast at Tiffany's. I tweet a lot. I'm on Facebook. And to me, my films, the Webbies, Facebook, Twitter, they're all medium. They're all like creative mediums for me. They're all interesting. They all reach people in a different way, and really I'm trying to spread ideas. So as I've become older, I've become closer to myself. I always say the Webbies were like this incredible period, but it was something, I was honoring other people, which I love to do, and shining a light on them. But when I started, I ran it for 10 years, and I was ready to have children, which is a whole other conversation. That's about resiliency and efficiency with my time, because the Webbies took like 100 hours a week, which you can't do if you want to have children.
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. It really wasn't. So I was like 29, my husband and I were like, I want to have children, I can't lead this life. And the other thing about the Webbies in terms of energy is you would do all this energy for the event, and then it would happen in one night, and then it was over, and then the next year you had to even do more. But when I made that film on reproductive choice, it took me 3 months, and I made that film, I don't know, 10 years ago. It still plays all over the world, so the energy, my creative energy I put into it was scalable, so it still exists and is helping the issue I care about, but doesn't require anything from me. So that was like a light bulb that went off, that if I can do more work that is less time, more impact, and be a good mother, be present and at home a lot, then that would be...
Then you get called out on Alice Radio.
Exactly.
I did not know that. You know, but in terms of finding one's voice, you know, it used to be that only the media, because the press wrote about me a lot when I was doing the Webby Awards, and I started doing Breakfast at Tiffany's, which is my own newsletter, which all of you could do. You all have an email list with your friends and people you work with. It's very fun to tell your own story. It's very empowering to, this is my narrative, and I'm going to shape it exactly how I want it. So as I've gotten older, that, you know, who I am, it was beautiful what you said, who you are and what you're doing are totally aligned, and then the whole universe just supports you. That's what I feel. That's where I feel like my work is now.
I think you've done a really great job. I mean, I've thought about this a lot in the past year, especially what's going on right now with Sheryl Sandberg, and I'm just bringing up some topical things of where they really want to have a certain voice themselves, and they really put themselves out there, and they're getting a backlash. And I feel you've done such a great job to have an effective voice without having any backlash. And I know it's because it's resonating with people because of the stories you're telling. But if you had to, you know, give advice about that,
I think that actually I have to say about the Sheryl Sandberg book. You know, when there was this great book that this French philosopher wrote that talking about a book that you've never read. Because right now there's so much media around books, And I kind of felt like I had read so much about the Sheryl Sandberg book that I didn't need to read it. And finally I was like, that's such a cop-out. I need to read the book. And I'm loving it. I'm reading it right now. So, and her book is really talking about being a woman leader in business, which I constantly think about. But I think an authenticity, I think people have been on my journey with me for so long. They saw me do the Webbies, switch back to filmmaking full time, and I'm very honest. When my father was diagnosed with brain cancer, I brought it up, my newsletter. My film became very, I guess the big sentence here, I think is the answer to the question, is when you speak your truth, you speak to a universal truth. And I think what Twitter and Facebook is actually kind of teaching people how to have their own voice, but people can sniff out inauthenticity. So I just always try to be really honest. But the irony is, like, we're just about to release a newsletter today, and people always comment because they seem very loose and carefree, but they spent a lot of time, I spent a lot of time, like, crafting. I write things, I do so many drafts of my films and anything, not on Twitter, but, which is why it's so liberating, but, everything takes a lot of time.
Well, in addition to authenticity, I think that one of the things that's notable about you is you're a notable person, but when you communicate to other people, when you tweet, when you are, what you put in your newsletter, it's all quality, it's all relevance. You're not tweeting, oh, what a big cup of coffee.
Right.
And I think that ends up diluting what your voice is, right? I mean, maybe you direct that to your friends, but when you speak to the world, what you put in your newsletter, you haven't had these kinds of controversies like Eve has brought up. You haven't had a lot of backlash because you're always authentic, but you're also relevant.
Well, that's nice to hear. I'm really a curious person. I think that my husband, he's a professor at Berkeley, and they both know Ken very well. We're very old friends. I mean, this is the great thing, is we haven't seen each other in a long time, so we're able to actually finally have a good conversation.
We have to do this in order to see each other.
But my husband and I collaborate on a lot of our films, and obviously we collaborate as parents. But we're just really incredibly curious about it. We feel like this is such an exciting time to be alive. So when I heard that all the systems are broken, like, that is not the way I look at the world right now. I'm like, we're rebuilding it. It's so exciting. I don't know, it's just like the way I look at things is that we finally all have the tools to really be engaging and helping and rethinking. And so I'm really interested in this time that we're living in.
So tell us about the day of disconnecting.
Well, a lot of people can't believe that I founded the Webbies, and obviously we're a very tech couple and everything, but we completely unplug. One day a week, we call it our tech Shabbats. We are Jewish, but we're not religious. Is there a clap from Jewish? Awesome. They're Jewish too. Oh, yeah. Clap for us. No,
I feel like channeling Honey Boo Boo and saying, we're all a little bit Jewish. We're all a little Jewish.
When my father, I can't believe you just quoted Honey Boo Boo. What?
Did that just happen
at this conference? Actually, when my father was sick, how many of you have had someone really close to you die? It's like all you think about is time. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we with people we love and texting? And I just really started thinking about that a lot. So when I first met Ken, he did not work on Saturdays, which I thought was very sexy. And then as the iPhone started creeping into our lives, it was like all 24/7, 7 days a week. So when my father was sick, I would go to his house, and he usually only had 1 good hour a day, and I wanted to be totally present and focused. And it was great. And so then when he died, I said to Ken, we need to have a conversation about something with any couple, like, never wants to, what are we going to talk about? I'm like, I want to seriously unplug 1 day a week for our kids. We have children, and for us, and I just don't feel like I'm being present. I don't think that any of us are in the world right now. So we did it, and we loved it. And it's incredible. So Friday night at sundown, we celebrate Shabbat, we light the candles, all the screens go off for 24 hours, and it's delicious. It's like, the thing that happens when you're not on technology, like all of you are experiencing now, except I'm seeing glowing screens, so I know there's some cell phones and iPads out there, but is that time slows down. And what's the one day of the week that you want to feel longer is Saturday. And you know, Einstein's theory of relativity is that time is relative to your state of motion, and with all this technology, we're all moving so quickly in our minds that there's not one day where I'm like, it's not, how did it get to be 5 o'clock? I say that like every day.
Yeah.
And so on Saturdays, it's the longest day ever, and then the other additive event is that on Saturday night, I can't wait to get back on. I kind of reappreciate technology again. So we've been doing it for 3 years. It's changed my life. I feel much more balanced. Talk about resilient. I feel like I've been more productive in the last 3 years than I ever have been. And I feel much more balanced and presence. It has an effect all throughout the week.
How do the kids take it?
It's like part of their life. They tell their friends, like, oh yeah, we don't do technology on the weekends. It's like, it's part of their identity. So parenting is all modeling. So, yeah.
Nice. And what would you tell, I mean, that's not an easy thing to do, is turn off, right? Disconnect. So do you have advice on how to make people do it?
You know, talking about what we're talking about, we're not disconnecting, it's like reconnecting on this other plane. And I just wrote this book and made a film called Brain Power, From Neurons to Networks. And it's all about, you know, the neuroscience of what all this technology is changing our brains. I mean, everything you do changes the synapses in your brain. And so we are rewiring our brains, and let's be mindful about how we're doing that. And probably one day off a week is really good. I don't need any neuroscientist to tell me that it's good for your brain. Because when I'm texting right before I go to sleep, does anyone have dreams where you're like texting and emailing in your sleep? It's not good for your brain. So it's been really great.
It's funny because I came to that conclusion around the same time you did, and I just did it. My body was kind of just telling me to do this.
Yeah.
And then when I saw your movie and you were doing it, I was like, oh yeah, now I get why I'm doing this. Like, it just really did reinforce it. I was fortunate enough to know your father, and I know that he would be very, very proud of everything you've done. It's just incredible. He would just find this fascinating. So.
Well, him and my mother, they're both wonderful thinkers, and but I go into a lot of my dad's ideas in Connected, which you can all check out from the site. But he would have loved this conference, but his ideas live on.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, speaking of time, we're out of it. But thank you so much for coming and sharing your film and sharing your experience.
Thank you for having me.